One is sadness. One is anger, frustration. I mean, you name it. It's so disheartening to think that 41 men in this body can make decisions for women and girls that will impact women and girls across our state for generations to come.
Throughout this debate, there was kind of what seemed like a new partnership among the 5 women of the Senate. What has that meant to you, the sister senators, throughout the past month or session, really?
Well, they are my sisters, and I would argue that it's really not a new thing. We have been together since I've been in the Senate. Definitely not on the same page when it comes to certain political issues, but this is one that all of us have in common. All of us are moms, all of us are women, of course, and we understand completely what our male-dominated legislature has done or is trying to do, and the impact. Like I said, it will be a devastating impact on women and girls across South Carolina for generations to come.
And you all are wearing buttons that say "Elect More Women."
Yes.
What are the barriers that women face when running in this state? That's
how long do you
I
have?
was going to say.
That list is very long, and I'm not one to mince words, and so when women come to me, as they often do, and say, "Hey, I'm thinking about running," my first piece of advice is run if your heart is leading you to run. Run if you want to change something. Run if you're pissed off about what our male-dominated legislature is doing. Run if you want to change this state for the better, but understand that those of us who have voices inside the South Carolina Senate and the South Carolina House, I've served in both chambers, and those of us who are not afraid to use our voices, we become targets. We are targeted by our own colleagues on issues that we disagree on, and it's unfortunate, but it's real. And women, I feel comfortable saying this, we face a totally different set of challenges, especially those of us who are mothers, those who have small or younger children, those who may not have a spouse or significant other at home or a support system. I mean, it's hard. It's hard to run for a myriad of reasons. It's hard to work and serve when we're getting called back constantly on issues like abortion and issues that the majority of South Carolinians don't believe we should be prioritizing. And so, I'm always encouraging, because we need more strong voices, and the voices of women, as you have seen, are sorely needed. Our perspectives are definitely needed in this discussion. We should be initiating the discussions because we're the only ones who have firsthand knowledge about what it takes, not only to give birth, but to raise a child. And some of us have raised our children as single moms or divorced moms, and it's not easy. And so to come here and advocate not just for ourselves, but for women and girls all over South Carolina, it's not something that any of us take lightly, because we know what's at stake. We know the challenges that we're up against, that we face without the abortion, without all the rhetoric and all of the divisive comments and the things that we ordinarily deal with up here. Abortion and issues like it take that rhetoric and take those interactions to a whole different level. And so, we need women who aren't afraid to speak the truth and to stand up and be a voice for other women and girls who may not have a voice otherwise.
Is there anything else you want to say?
not that I would encourage you to maybe listen to what I said earlier. I feel like I've been saying these things repeatedly, but we've just had so many opportunities because these abortion bills keep getting prioritized, many without giving the public an opportunity to weigh in. I mean, we had a male Republican colleague who introduced a bill or an amendment to let the voters decide. But our male-dominated legislature knows that they are outnumbered, and that South Carolinians, female and male, feel very differently about a woman's right to choose. And so, of course, they didn't allow it. And that, in my opinion, speaks volumes about just the level of intention when it comes to controlling us, as opposed to making sure that we have choices, that we have options available to us, and we have the support to do what is best for us, and that we take that up with our God, and last time I checked, my God is not a colleague. And so it's just, these are things that I hope the public is taking notice of. I'm sure they are, because of the amount of love and outpouring of love and support that we've gotten, and encouragement that we've gotten, not just from South Carolinians, but from all over the country, because we put partisan politics aside and party affiliations aside and decided to come together and work for what is in the best interest of women and girls in our state.
Is there anything else you would ask? Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's a victory from where we were, before this, certainly from where we were at this time last year. Last year, at this time, if we had passed a bill like this, it would have been immediately enjoined. And we don't know what the ultimate outcome will be when this goes to the South Carolina Supreme Court, but you're not dealing with the United States Supreme Court at this point. So this is a far different environment, climate, and hopefully this bill will stand in South Carolina.
Why do you think it passed this time around, and are you hopeful that it will survive any legal challenges?
I'm not sure what you mean by passed this time around. I mean, it passed, a heartbeat bill passed before.
Yeah, but I mean, like from last year's special session that we...
Last year's special session was mainly about the Human Life Protection Act, which would be protecting life from conception forward. So this was a heartbeat bill, which is a later point in time. So we were not able to pass the Human Life Protection Act. This is not as good of a bill as that, but it is a step in the right direction.
Will you continue pushing for that next year, for the ban?
I don't know that next year is going to be the right time in the sense that the makeup of the Senate, is not changing next year. So I think everybody felt like the Human Life Protection Act, the vote we just had a few weeks ago, that was probably the end of that for this session, would be my guess.
Have you spoken to fellow colleagues about that in the House and Senate, and do you think there's any appetite for that in the future, to bring back a ban from conception? Are there enough votes?
Well, certainly if the makeup, once you go through the 2024 elections, if the makeup of this House and the Senate has changed, there's going to be, if I'm still here, there's going to certainly be a renewed effort to protect life at an earlier point in time.
Are you disturbed by the legislative process that's played out? Do you feel the Senate has put itself in a weaker position after the vote today?
I'm not quite sure what you're trying to get at. I mean, the
A
Senate
lot was made about the Senate capitulating to this request.
I think between the two chambers, this was the farthest we could go, the most we could get done. If the House was really dictating to the Senate, as some have claimed, we would have passed the Human Life Protection Act. If the House was in the role of dictating, the House was in the role of having to take the heartbeat bill because the Senate wouldn't pass the Human Life Protection Act. So, yeah.
Do you believe the majority of South Carolinians would appreciate this 6-week abortion ban bill? Do they want more? Do they want less?
Yes, I certainly believe the majority of South Carolinians because Carolinians value life, want to see laws in place that protect an unborn child, by all means.
Why'd you bring the models? Because there was an
Because
issue.
we always have to remember we are talking about not one person, the mother. It's the mother and the baby. Babies only get here through a mother. So, I put the models out because we're not talking just in theory. We're talking about, as I use my own example, a child that's the size of a raspberry at 6 weeks after conception and now has a name. And that's the same person. So if you allow children to be destroyed 6 weeks after conception, that person is not born 7 months later, okay? So we just somehow sometimes lose sight of that. That is one and the same person.
Well, then how do you feel personally? Would you say less than 6 weeks is still a person? Do you believe that life begins at conception? And how do you feel that there will still be abortions committed?
I believe science teaches that life begins at conception. There is no other point in time along the line of human development at which you could say a new human being has come into being. That's what DNA science teaches us. When the sperm and the ovum unite, you have a new human life that has never existed before.
Does it upset you then that there will be abortions that will be taking place, or
Of
will this
course.
eliminate the most of them?
When we had the heartbeat bill in effect last summer, the average number of abortions fell about 65% during that 7-week period of time. There's certainly going to be babies born as a result of this law that would not otherwise have been born. Now, yeah, I'm still concerned about the babies that are going to be killed earlier than 6 weeks. That's why the fight will continue.
What do you say to the notion made by many women that some women, most women, don't know they're even pregnant at 6 weeks? What do you say to that?
Well, you kind of implicit in that kind of question is the idea that there is a right
Okay.
to kill the baby, that once you find out you're pregnant, you have a right to kill or not kill another human being. Well, I don't accept that premise. I don't think all women accept that premise. I have 4 daughters, a wife, and 2 daughters-in-law. They're all going to be happy that this bill passed today, and they all would have wished that the Human Life Protection Act would have passed.
Thank you. I guess.
Thank you very much.
Senator, I sat here and I was listening to what you said, and I was trying to go through this, and I've read it several times. So the process, and make sure I'm right, is for say we have a rape victim, and they go in, they want to have an abortion, they report it, and they want to have the abortion. They then have to go into the facility, see a doctor, receive notification, receive the pamphlet, so to speak, of their rights.
She will have already received that.
Where would she get that from? The front desk?
I think you can receive it in that manner. My understanding is that most of the time it is emailed to the woman when the woman calls in to make an appointment.
Okay. So
She can also have it mailed to her.
let's follow what you're saying regarding the 2 visits, because I still see it in here that it would require 2, because you go to the clinic, if you're a rape victim, of course, you would then have received normal medical care, have a kit done, so to speak, on you, a rape kit done, then you would receive the pamphlet. And am I correct in understanding that you received the notice which says that you have a right, that they're going to have to conduct a sonogram or ultrasound on you, and then you have a right to look at the heartbeat or see if there's a heartbeat, but you have to wait. You go in this on day 1 on Monday. You have to wait 24 hours to go, and you would see a physician that first time to have the rape kit done. Then you would have to wait 24 hours. Even if you wait, nothing can be done. You go in the next day after the 24 hours have passed, And then you have to put it in writing. No telehealth is allowed here, nor can you see a PA or a practical nurse. You have to see the physician. You then have to have that discussion with the physician, and it has to be signed by the alleged victim or woman, whoever it might be.
And you're hypothetical both.
Yes. So she would have to confirm in the doctor's presence that no doctor, I don't want to view, I don't want to be present, or I want to hear the results of an ultrasound or sonogram. Is that how you understand this, the way this section is written?
I agree with most everything you said, except that it requires 2 in-person visits. It doesn't do that.
Okay, so, but my,
The 24-hour waiting period is tied to the receipt of the written materials.
but that's not what it says. Follow my scenario.
Is there something in here, now maybe I missed it, but is there something in here that talks about 24
Follow
hours?
my scenario. My scenario is of such where she goes into the center. I'm a rape victim. She sees a doctor. She gets the materials. The doctor does let me finish, because you know how we lawyers get. Gets the material. She has to consult with the doctor saying, I'm a rape victim. I want to get rid of this. I gotta get it. I don't want to be pregnant. I don't want this child. He gets the information pursuant to this bill, notes his chart, her chart accordingly. She has this rape kit done on her, has the evaluation with this doctor. Under this bill, she cannot have the abortion until 24 hours later, but before that, she has to see a doctor. It might not be that same doctor, but she has to see a doctor and confirm to that doctor that she is not going to, either she does or does not want to. She has to put it in writing. An informed consent is what we call it, that she is not going to look at the ultrasound or sonogram for the heartbeat. And then, and only then, at that second visit, can she have the abortion or done. Now, I don't know about you, but I have had a hard time understanding, and I'm going to check with some doctors about this, but I know that if you come in the first time, they're not going to give you a pamphlet and let you go. If you come in that first time and you believe that you're pregnant, they're going to consult with you to confirm whether or not it's done, whether or not you are in fact pregnant, and you can't do that unless there's a physician present to give that diagnosis. So under this, it has to be the second appointment.
Senator, I think under the hypothetical that you gave, there would be 2 visits. But I think that's the way it is under current law.
But if
Right,
that's not,
but most of the time what
we're getting
happens,
to the 2.
but that's not what happens most of the time.
But what I'm saying is, we're getting to the fact.
This doesn't change current law.
I get it. What you were saying, I understood what you were saying is that you'd heard speculation that there wasn't a requirement of 2 visits. There is, because it is now, because you go into the doctor and you have to wait 24 hours anyway.
But your hypothetical assumes that the first visit is required. The first visit is not required.
Well, how do you get a
Right? Because
diagnosis of pregnant?
most of the time, I understand the way this works. Most of the time is that the woman will call into the facility or try to schedule an appointment, and then they give her the written materials. And I guess you could do that if you come in and show up at the desk. They can email those to you. They can mail those to you. But there's not a visit at the outset typically. Typically, somebody will call in. They then email them the materials. They have the materials. They'll schedule the appointment for tomorrow. Then they go in, and that is their only visit.
Would you be surprised if I tried to submit to you as a woman that what normally happens is you get even if you've had a plan, even if you've had one of those test kits from a drugstore, that what normally happens is the woman goes in to the doctor and gets a diagnosis, because sometimes those can be wrong. So that's her real first visit with the doctor, where the doctor diagnoses her as, yes, you are pregnant, and hooks her up like they did me 4 times, and they hook you up, and you go on and you make other plans. So I'm just saying that at that first appointment where you get the diagnosis, that's appointment number 1. Appointment number 2, so I'm just, do you understand that what I'm trying to say, that an interpretation between the House and the Senate is not necessarily an unfair interpretation, because I always considered it under both forms of the legislation as being a 2-part visit, because there's no way a doctor's going to do this unless he gives you that. After he diagnosed you, he's not going to rely on your little, what is that little kit you get from the drugstore? Not you, guy. What's the little kit you get from the drugstore to determine if you're pregnant? EPTs, early pregnancy tests or something. But they don't rely on that, at least not in my instance. They never rely on that. They make you come in and see a doctor to get diagnosed.
Senator, I understand the scenario that you outlined. But I don't think there's anything in the bill that changes existing law on that scenario.
I'm just trying to.
In your scenario, what you're talking about is it would require 2 visits now.
But,
right? So that doesn't change under the
but
bill.
where you were saying earlier that there was an unfair interpretation, I'm trying to say no, there's not, because it was always two doctor visits.
But my interpretation of what I read was that this bill requires 2 in person, as opposed to what the current law, right? The suggestion was current law doesn't require 2, this does require 2. I disagree with that.
Well, technically, they're both of them.
Okay, I understand. All right, Mr. President, that is in 630. Section 11, big section 11 this is something that we've talked about before, but it requires PIVA, it requires the state health plans to cover contraceptives for dependents. And then section 12 just ensures, and I know you like this, Mr. President, that you can get involved in lawsuits. Section 13 is important. Section 13 repeals the 22-week prohibition. But it also says that if this law were to be enjoined or struck down, that we want the pain capable to go back into effect. Right? Because what we don't want to do is to repeal pain capable, and then this gets struck down, and then you got it's wide at that point. So we would rather have 22 weeks than nothing, but we would prefer to have something better than that. That's basically what this is saying. So with that, Mr. President, I've completed my explanation, and I'm happy to yield the floor.
Senator from Charleston, Senator Walker, Mr. Wright.
To be heard on the bill as amended.
Recognized. Senator from Charleston, Senator Simmons.
Thank you. I don't know if y'all read in the Washington Post, I think it was just a couple days ago, I believe that the majority leader was quoted as saying that he doesn't like me because I firebombed him. Well, I didn't see him with his bumper gear on, and he refused to answer questions. So now I am going to explain what I see as the key differences, and maybe make some revelations to you as how these differences even came about. So, as you all know, Senator Massey, the senator from Edgefield, was actually the author of 474. He obviously liked our version. He helped vote, he did vote for it. And then what he did when he wanted to make some changes is he went across the hall and ensured them that he could get what was 14 pages of their changes that amended the bill. He assured them that he had the votes to get that passed. And if you don't believe me, it's an easy way. Pick up the phone, call anybody you know in the House, and say, man, why did y'all amend that? Why did you amend it, so much? They're going to tell you because our majority leader assured them. The The leaders over there will say, our majority leader assured them. And he didn't have the votes at the time. He may have it now, but he did not have those votes at the time. So he monkeyed with his own bill and now stands up here and says, well, it doesn't matter. I mean, there's nothing in here that really matters. But I'll tell you, just that alone is enough to make me scream. And I do hope that you're going to take me up on the offer. Just make a call and ask. Also, the people in Judiciary, on Judiciary Committee, will tell you that Ms. McCraven, who offered this amendment, didn't go far enough. But he was assured by the senator from Edgefield that this is something that he would be able to get passed. Yet, according to the senator from Edgefield, it does nothing. So if it does nothing, why would they take the chance on us rejecting it? Why would they take the chance on us saying, you know what, we're not going to pass this, and so therefore you're stuck with 22 weeks? What they did over there, with the consent of the majority leader, was put the bill at risk, and therefore if it does not pass, all these babies, it's not going to be on us, it's going to be because this bill got monkeyed with. Now, he talked to you at first about the legislative findings. Folks, that is extremely important, obviously, and I'll tell you, if any of you sit on the Education Committee, just a month ago, on April 12, 2023, Senator Massey admitted that he does not like whereas sections, and he says that the courts get him in trouble with that. Okay, so he doesn't even like these whereas sections. Told the Education Committee that they needed to just go ahead and pass a bill that does what it says it's going to do and not come up with these legislative findings, which, by the way, none of us have been able to take a look at. But those legislative findings are big, especially as he points out in Section 3. Let me read it verbatim because he left out a key word. The state of South Carolina has a compelling interest from the outset, that's the word that he left out, of a woman's pregnancy in protecting the health of the woman and the life of the unborn child. You couple that with the definitional changes, and that's a big problem. So if you look at the definitions that we passed and the definitions that they passed, first you've got that pregnancy is different. Pregnant means the human biological female reproductive condition of having a living unborn child in her body, whether or not she has reached the age of majority. And then unborn child means an individual organism of the species Homo sapiens from conception until live birth. Okay, so basically it interchanges the words conception and fertilization. And the problem with that is it's a 2-week differential. When the egg is fertilized, it's going to have to have already hit the wall. So that's a 2-week differential. Now what they're trying to say is basically it's the moment that the sperm hits the egg. So they're trying to take it really from 6 weeks down to 4 weeks is what they're doing. And those are the big, big changes that I see that I don't think anybody should appreciate. I sat here and listened to the senator from Beaufort stand up and tell everyone, all of us passionately, that he did not think it was right to allow the state dominion over a woman's body the moment the sperm hit the egg. But that is what this does when you change the definitional section and you add factual sections that were never approved by us. So let's go through a few other things that I think are worth mentioning. The judicial bypass section, if you take a look at that, and I think how I heard him word it was, let me get to it real quick. Limits, okay, the fact where it says people are saying that, hey, this limits minors to 6 weeks for an abortion. He says that's not true. He says that's not true. He also says it limits judicial bypass options for minors. He says that's not true. But if you look at it, what it does, Senator Massey stood up here and said, well, those who are under 15 are
Senator from Darlington, one person do that.
Mr. President, just to request that pursuant to Jefferson's guide, and I'm supporting a lot of the things that the Senator from Charleston is saying. I anticipate that this will be a contentious debate, and I think that under our rules, we don't call senators names. We need to end up calling them by their counties so that we can make it so that we can have them
while we're at this break, not to characterize the position of another senator as well.
Mr. President,
Senator from Georgia.
I think it's just in support, is just that we can state what they said and state why we're different, as opposed to stating what their characterization and their motivation.
Understood?
Senator Sullivan Ford.
Okay, so the
Thank you,
senator,
Senator Johnson, Senator